In the scattered star seas, war no longer crept in silence, it roared across the heavens, and every cultivator could feel its shadow closing in. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. In the state of Yue, situated at the heart of the heavenly south region, war had long been the norm within the cultivation world. True peace was a rarity, fleeting, fragile, and seldom sustained. The 6 great sects of Yue had first fallen to the devil Dao. In the aftermath, the victors turned upon one another, waging a brutal struggle for dominance over the land. In the end, the Ghost Spirit sect emerged triumphant. Yet their reign was not destined to last. Roughly a century ago, during the catastrophic battle at Devil Fall Valley, the sect suffered grievous losses among its high-grade cultivators. Seizing this moment of weakness, the controlling spirit sect allied with other forces and drove the Ghost Spirit sect out of Yue entirely. Thus, the state of Yue was once again divided, this time under the dominion of the Devil Dao sects, with the controlling spirit sect at their head. Their influence was immense, so vast that they claimed nearly half of Yue's spirit veins and mines. Among these was a certain large valley beneath which lay a once rich spirit stone deposit. In its early days, the mine had been abundant beyond measure. But centuries of relentless extraction, first by Yue's original 6 sects, then by the Ghost Spirit sect, and finally by the controlling spirit sect, had nearly exhausted its reserves. What remained was little more than a hollow relic, a mine in slow decline, half abandoned and forgotten. Only 2 Qi condensation disciples remained stationed there as guards. On that particular day, the 2 disciples stood idly at the underground entrance, exchanging gossip about recent happenings within their sect. Unbeknownst to them, high above, an azure humanoid figure silently burrowed through the earth, employing an earth movement technique so refined it left no trace. In the blink of an eye, he emerged within a plain, unremarkable cavern deep inside the mine. From beginning to end, the 2 disciples sensed nothing. A flicker of yellow light revealed the figure's true form, a young man of unassuming appearance. His gaze drifted toward an empty corner of the cave, and a faint, knowing smile touched his lips. This man was none other than Han Li, who had journeyed all the way from the state of Xi. A month prior, upon emerging from seclusion in Xi, he had not encountered Nangong Wan. Her path of cultivation differed greatly from his own. Over the past century, she had repeatedly left seclusion, wandering across the heavenly south region to temper her mind and spirit. Yet fate had once again placed them out of step when Han Li emerged. She had already re-entered seclusion years earlier. Though disappointment lingered in his heart, Han Li did not attempt to disturb her cultivation. Instead, he sent a voice transmission talisman informing her of his impending long journey, before visiting Lu Lo and Liu Yu of the Drifting Cloud sect. Their reunion was filled with genuine joy. Over the past century, the 2 had devoted themselves tirelessly to expanding the sect, elevating it into one of the most renowned powers in the heavenly south region. During this time, Song Yu had successfully advanced to the nascent soul stage, becoming the sect's 4th cultivator of that level. Han Li was deeply pleased. What surprised him even more was that after years of searching, Song Yu had discovered a disciple over a decade ago who possessed an innately powerful spiritual sense. Due to Han Li's seclusion, the disciple had been left to cultivate independently within the sect. Remarkably, the youth also possessed a dual-attribute spiritual root of exceptional quality. Intrigued, Han Li immediately requested to meet him. The disciple Shijian appeared to be a frail youth of 16 or 17, with delicate, almost refined features. Yet upon closer inspection, Han Li confirmed that his spiritual sense was indeed extraordinary, several times stronger than that of peers at the same cultivation level. More importantly, his temperament was steady, honest, and grounded. That alone was enough. Without hesitation, Han Li asked if he would accept him as master. Shijian, already aware of Han Li's identity, was overwhelmed with joy. The opportunity to become the disciple of the foremost cultivator in the heavenly south region was beyond his wildest dreams. He immediately fell to his knees, kowtowing in gratitude as he pledged himself. Han Li laughed heartily and brought him back to the interconnected peaks. There he established a new cave abode for him and entrusted him with the Great Development Treasure Scriptures. He emphasized the importance of cultivating the Great Development technique, while allowing the youth freedom to choose a complementary cultivation art from the scriptures. After all, the monarch of soul divergence had been a genius beyond compare, his legacy vast and profound. Shijian, still at the qi condensation stage, was provided with ample medicinal pills to support his growth. Han Li also entrusted Tianqina, his other disciple, with guiding the young man in his absence. Despite her dragon cry physique, Tianqina had, with the aid of countless pills provided by the humanoid puppet, advanced to the mid-foundation establishment stage over the past century. As Han Li had anticipated, her path toward core formation was not beyond reach. With Shijian accepted as his disciple, Han Li felt a lingering burden finally lift from his heart. Before his passing, the monarch of soul divergence had entrusted him with finding a successor. Once Shijian reached the core formation stage or beyond, Han Li intended to grant him powerful treasures and send him to the far west to inherit the Thousand Bamboo sect and claim the monarch's legacy. As for Mu Peiling, she remained in seclusion within her cave abode. With the secret technique bestowed by Nangong Wan, she had advanced to the late core formation stage. Day and night, she cultivated, relentlessly striving for a breakthrough into the nascent soul stage. Yet Han Li was not optimistic. Talent alone was not enough. Every nascent soul cultivator required a unique, miraculous opportunity, something beyond effort or discipline. Without such fortune, Mu Peiling's chances remained painfully slim. Having settled all matters within the sect and his own abode, Han Li departed the Dream Cloud Mountains and headed directly for the state of Yue. Ling Yuling's message had been clear: the Star Palace stood on the brink of collapse, utterly suppressed by the Starfall Coalition. Otherwise, she would never have resorted to using a myriad distance talisman to seek his aid. Han Li could not afford delay. He would not arrive only to find her fallen. And now he stood once more within the underground cavern where the ancient teleportation formation had once been. Though he had destroyed it during his previous visit, restoring it posed little challenge. To his relief, only 2 qi condensation disciples guarded the site. With even the simplest concealment technique, their presence was inconsequential. Calmly, Han Li removed his storage pouch and tossed it into the air. It spun inverted, and in a burst of white light, a cascade of materials poured forth. When the light faded, a mound of strange stones and minerals, half the height of a man, lay before him. With a flick of his hand, the pouch shimmered again. This time, formation flags and plates emerged, hovering mid-air, radiating multicolored spiritual light. Han Li murmured an incantation and swept his sleeve. The tools shot outward as streaks of light, embedding themselves into the cave walls. Instantly, thick white mist surged forth, engulfing the entire chamber. To any passerby, the cave would appear utterly empty. Hidden within the illusion, Han Li began his work. With his mastery of formations, constructing a small teleportation array was a trivial task provided the materials were sufficient. In just 2 days, it was complete. After a final inspection, he activated it. Light flickered, a low hum resonated, and then silence. The formation stood stable and functional. A hint of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. In a blink, he stepped into the array. Yet just before activating it, he hesitated. After a moment's thought, he patted a spirit beast pouch. A hiss echoed as it opened, followed by a surge of icy wind. 12 snow-white centipedes emerged, each bearing 2 pairs of wings, their presence both eerie and formidable. Han Li chanted softly, and at once they shrank to palm-sized forms. Exhaling frigid qi, they encased themselves in translucent spheres of ice. With a flick of his fingers, 12 azure threads pierced the spheres. The ice orbs sank into the earth and vanished. Only then did Han Li nod in satisfaction. With 12 7th-grade demon beasts guarding the site, even a nascent soul cultivator would struggle to destroy the formation. Reassured, he activated it. White light swallowed him whole. After a wave of dizziness, Han Li reappeared on an island tens of millions of kilometers away. Everything was unchanged, undisturbed, forgotten. Without a word, he stepped out and with a casual slash behind him, destroyed the formation in a flash of golden light. Moments later, he emerged from the stone chamber. An azure streak rose into the sky and vanished into the horizon. Han Li flew straight toward Heavenly Star City, passing several islands along the way. Yet he showed no inclination to descend upon any of them. Before long, however, he noticed something unusual. Every cultivator he encountered seemed to be in a hurry, as if driven by some unseen urgency. When two unfamiliar groups crossed paths, both sides would instantly grow vigilant, their expressions tightening, the air between them turning heavy with tension. This subtle but pervasive unease caused Han Li's brows to knit slightly. Beneath the surface calm, he could clearly sense a storm gathering within the scattered star seas. As he drew closer to the massive island upon which Heavenly Star City stood, the number of traveling cultivators steadily increased. Among them were not only tense standoffs, but also outright clashes. Some groups were already locked in fierce battles, their killing intent unmistakable, each strike ruthless. Each move aimed at ending lives rather than testing strength. At first, Han Li paid them little mind, but as such encounters became more frequent, he began to understand this chaos was undoubtedly tied to the escalating conflict between the Starfall Coalition and the Star Palace. Though the Starfall Coalition appeared to hold the upper hand, the Star Palace had ruled the scattered star seas for countless years. A power of such longevity would not fall so easily. They were certain to possess hidden trump cards. Moreover, they maintained intricate ties with many major sects alliances that lay dormant in times of peace, yet would surely surface when destruction loomed at their doorstep. And yet the presence of cultivators unaffiliated with either faction, now entangled in these violent struggles, told a more ominous story. It suggested that the Star Palace truly stood on the brink. After all, neutral powers would not intervene unless the situation had reached a point where inaction was no longer an option. Naturally, Han Li had no intention of blindly throwing himself into such a conflict. Information was essential, but gathering it was no easy task. The low-grade cultivators he encountered knew little of substance. Thus, despite passing many Foundation establishment cultivators along his journey, he did not bother to stop or question them. On that day, as he streaked through the sky like a beam of azure light, his expression shifted ever so slightly. His gaze turned toward a distant direction. He paused briefly mid-flight, then abruptly changed course. At his current cultivation level, traversing several kilometers required little more than a few flashes of movement. In moments he had already covered over 5 kilometers. Hovering high above, he looked down. A faint smile tugged at his lips. Below, two figures were locked in combat, a black-robed elderly man and a burly, imposing middle-aged man. One wielded a shimmering yellow flying sword, while the other controlled an azure ring-shaped treasure. Their attacks collided in bursts of dazzling light, neither yielding an inch. Both were at the mid-core formation stage. Their treasures were evenly matched, their strength comparable perfect equals. If neither possessed a hidden trump card capable of ending the battle swiftly, Han Li estimated their fight would drag on for most of the day. Even then, it was unlikely either could truly kill the other. More likely, the battle would end with one side retreating after a narrow defeat. Han Li's sudden appearance did not go unnoticed. Both men immediately halted their attacks, their gazes snapping upward, eyes filled with caution and suspicion. Their spiritual senses swept over Han Li, and in the next instant their expressions changed drastically. To avoid unnecessary attention, Han Li had concealed his cultivation to the early nascent soul stage. Yet even that was more than enough to overwhelm two core formation cultivators. Almost simultaneously, the two men waved their hands, recalling their treasures. The elderly man hurriedly stepped forward, bowing deeply. "I am Bishun of Fallen Spirit Island. May I have the honor of knowing your esteemed name, Senior?" The burly man followed suit, his expression now markedly deferential. "If there is anything you require, senior, we would be honored to assist." Hanley crossed his arms, his expression calm and indifferent. "You don't need to know who I am," he said flatly. "I've been away for many years. There are some matters I wish to ask." Relief flickered across their faces. The elderly man responded immediately, "Of course, senior. We will tell you everything we know." Hanley gave a slight nod and began his inquiries. The two naturally assumed he was a nascent soul cultivator who had only recently emerged from long seclusion, and they spared no effort in recounting the major events that had unfolded over the past century. Over 100 years ago, demon beasts from the outer seas had seized numerous human-inhabited islands. Issuing a stark ultimatum, all human cultivators were to withdraw. War was inevitable. Curiously, neither the Star Palace nor the Starfall Coalition deployed many cultivators to this conflict. Instead, it was itinerant cultivators and disciples from smaller sects, those who directly benefited from those islands, who gathered to resist. They congregated on several large islands equipped with teleportation formations and fought desperately against the advancing tide of demon beasts. Yet calling it a battle was generous. In truth, it was little more than a desperate stand, human cultivators clinging to survival behind fragile island restrictions. Even so, those who dared to fight were not weak. At minimum, they possessed foundation establishment cultivation. Tens of thousands gathered divided across islands, each holding roughly 5,000 to 6,000 cultivators. But from the very beginning, the situation was dire. Countless low-grade demon beasts swarmed the islands surrounding them entirely. The sheer number alone shattered the cultivators' confidence. Within half a month, every island fell. Not a single high-grade metamorphosis stage demon beast had even appeared. It was the endless tide of lesser beasts that overwhelmed everything, their numbers alone enough to crush all resistance. Faced with such disparity, the human cultivators had no choice but to retreat into the inner seas. Before leaving, they destroyed all teleportation formations, leading outward, abandoning everything they had built. Thus, the outer star seas once again became the dominion of demon beasts. Of course, this was not a permanent surrender. Given time, centuries, perhaps millennia, humans would return. The outer seas held an inexhaustible supply of demon cores, a resource far too valuable to relinquish forever. Another revelation caught Han Li's attention. Several decades ago, the Heavenly Star Sages had passed away. Yet before their deaths, they had launched a devastating assault on the Starfall Coalition's main base. Wielding the terrifying power of their divine essence, fused light, they slew multiple nascent soul cultivators in a single strike. At the time, the Archsaint of the Six Paths and Wan Sangu had been deep within a secret chamber, discussing critical matters. Forced out by the sudden attack, they confronted the Heavenly Star Sages directly. They had believed the Sages were bound to Heavenly Star City, unable to leave the divine essence-fused mountains. They were wrong. What followed shocked the entire scattered star seas. The Heavenly Star Sages did not seek a prolonged battle. Instead, from the very outset, they unleashed a forbidden technique, detonating centuries of accumulated divine essence-fused light in a single, catastrophic burst. The explosion was apocalyptic. The Starfall Coalition's main base was obliterated. At the epicenter, the Archsaint of the Six Paths and Wan Sangu were annihilated instantly, nascent souls and all, leaving nothing behind. In that single moment, the greatest powers of both factions vanished. Compared to the Star Palace, the Starfall Coalition was left gravely weakened. Many elders and core formation cultivators present at the base had perished as well. In the decades that followed, Ling Yuling rose to power, leading the Star Palace to reclaim lost territory and force the coalition into steady decline. For a time, it seemed inevitable the Starfall Coalition would fall, but fate had other plans. At the brink of collapse, Wan Tianming, sect master of the Myriad Gates of Enlightenment, broke through to the late nascent soul stage. A new great cultivator was born. With his rise, the tide turned. Wan Tianming unified the coalition, becoming its undisputed leader. He slew several Star Palace elders, carving out a fearsome reputation. Over the following decades, his relentless offensives pushed the Star Palace into a dire state, worse than even when their greatest enemies had still lived. Recently, the Starfall Coalition had forced open a path toward Heavenly Star City and issued ghost crests across the region. Every sect was compelled to choose, submit or be destroyed, and Wan Tianming proved his resolve by annihilating several sects allied with the Star Palace. The entire scattered Star Seas was thrown into chaos. Some sects sealed themselves away, others fled to Heavenly Star City. Many seized the opportunity to expand into abandoned territories. No one could remain untouched. Now the Starfall Coalition's forces had gathered on islands near Heavenly Star City, assembling their strongest cultivators for what appeared to be the final confrontation. Wan Tianming had no intention of prolonging this war. He intended to end it decisively. Yet when would the battle begin? And how many cultivators had gathered? To these questions, neither man had answers. Most cultivators wished only to avoid the coming storm, but many had no choice. They were forced to choose a side. And in this climate of suspicion, spies were everywhere probing, watching, judging allegiance. The closer one drew to Heavenly Star City, the more chaotic everything became. Having heard all he needed, Han Li fell silent, deep in thought. He spared the two core formation cultivators any further questioning. After listening to the account of the two core formation cultivators, Han Li felt a quiet sense of reassurance settle within him. It was now evident that Ling Yuling had summoned him through the myriad distance talisman with a clear purpose to contend against the sect master of the myriad gates of enlightenment. As for this Wan Tianming, Han Li had encountered him once before within the Heaven Void Hall. The man had left behind an unfavorable impression, calculating, inscrutable, as though always scheming behind a composed exterior. Yet even so, Han Li had not expected that he would one day advance to the late nascent soul stage. The Heavenly Star sages, who had perished alongside the Archsant of the Six Paths, and Wan Sangu, could never have foreseen such a turn of events. In their final moments, they must have believed the Star Palace would inevitably crush the Starfall Coalition and reclaim absolute dominion over the scattered Star Seas. In their eyes, there would have been no need to seek aid from outsiders. And yet, Han Li did not regard Wan Tianming as a true threat. Wan Tianming had only reached the late nascent soul stage after him. There was no reason to believe he could rival Han Li's strength. After emerging from seclusion, Han Li had further refined his cultivation. His spiritual sense had surged to new heights. Even if he were to face a deity transformation cultivator, he now possessed just enough means to preserve his life, albeit by the narrowest of margins. With that thought, Han Li's mind drifted towards something else entirely. The divine essence-fused light and the fabled divine essence-fused mountain. The cultivation art itself would not be difficult to obtain. It was not a closely guarded secret. With enough effort, he could likely acquire a copy somewhere within the scattered Star Seas. Even without the Star Palace's assistance, it would merely cost him time. But the mountain, that was another matter entirely. An object of such rarity might not exist elsewhere in the human world. Whether it was essential for cultivating the divine essence-fused light remained uncertain. Yet one fact was undeniable. The Heavenly Star sages had only begun cultivating this art after discovering that mountain, at the very least, it must have played a crucial role. Otherwise, given the relative accessibility of the technique, far more cultivators would have mastered it by now. But clearly, they had not. Lost in these thoughts, Han Li gave a distracted nod to the two core formation cultivators. After offering a few simple words of thanks, his figure blurred into an azure streak and vanished into the horizon. Throughout the entire exchange, he had not asked why the two had been fighting, nor which side they belonged to. The two men remained where they stood, watching his departing figure with respectful expressions. Only after the streak of azure light had completely disappeared did they turn toward one another. The tension returned at once. A trace of hostility flickered in their eyes. Yet after Han Li's interruption, neither had any real desire to continue the fight. A few half-hearted insults were exchanged before they both departed in opposite directions somewhat awkwardly. By then, Han Li had already traveled over 50 kilometers away. Far across the ocean, tens of thousands of kilometers from Heavenly Star City, more than a dozen streaks of light raced through the sky toward the distant city. The group consisted of cultivators of varying ages, yet all wore identical attire, clearly members of the same sect or faction. Perhaps it was their proximity to Heavenly Star City that bred a sense of false security. Their expressions had softened, and some had even begun conversing casually through voice transmission. Then, without warning, the situation changed. Blinding white light erupted from the ocean below. In the next instant, over a dozen pillars of radiant light shot upward like divine spears. Thunderous explosions followed as they struck the group. Only 3 core formation cultivators barely managed to evade the ambush. The rest were erased. Cries of agony echoed briefly before being swallowed by the roaring light. The 3 survivors were stunned, then furious. They immediately summoned their treasures, their gazes snapping downward in search of their attackers. At that moment, several streaks of light surged up from the sea surrounding them in a tight formation. Among the encircling figures, one of the elderly survivors seemed to recognize someone. His face twisted with fury. "Starfall Coalition dogs," he spat. A sinister-looking middle-aged man chuckled coldly in response. "Huh, if it isn't Brother Lu of the White Water Sword Sect. By your logic, doesn't that make you Star Palace dogs?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "And didn't your sect claim neutrality? Why are you heading to Heavenly Star Island?" "Humph. Why ask what you already know?" the elderly man retorted sharply. "Our Whitewater Sword Sect has always been aligned with the Star Palace. In its hour of need, we will naturally stand by it. Enough talk, move." With that command, he and his 2 companions transformed into streaks of light, fleeing in unison. As they sped away, their lights intertwined, merging into a massive tri-colored pillar, red-yellow, and white sweeping forward with tremendous force. It was clear they had no intention of fighting. They were fleeing, but the 2 cultivators in their path showed no sign of alarm. Instead, they exchanged a glance and raised their hands simultaneously. Without warning, a vast surge of azure light erupted outward, engulfing the oncoming pillar before it could react. Moments later, a massive azure net materialized, ensnaring the 3 cultivators completely. No matter how fiercely they struggled, they could not break free. "Haha, struggle all you want, Brother Lu," the sinister man laughed. "This all-encompassing net was bestowed upon us by one of our elders. With your cultivation escape is impossible. And even if you did—" His smile widened coldly. "What difference would it make? Heavenly Star City is already surrounded. Its fall is only a matter of time." He opened his mouth, and a small white sword shot forth, streaking toward the trapped cultivators. "Oh," a calm, unfamiliar voice suddenly echoed through the air. "From what you're saying, Heavenly Star City has already been surrounded for quite some time. Care to elaborate?" The voice was neither loud nor urgent, yet it carried clearly to every ear. The middle-aged man stiffened. "Who's there?" he barked, his expression tightening as he scanned his surroundings. The others followed suit, releasing their spiritual sense, searching frantically, but found nothing. Confusion spread among them. "What are you looking for?" "I'm right here." A faint chuckle followed. Azure light flickered, and a figure appeared before the trapped cultivators. A young man in azure robes, seemingly in his 20s, stood there calmly, his gaze indifferent as it swept over the surrounding enemies. The 2 nearest cultivators probed him with their spiritual sense, and instantly recoiled. A nascent soul cultivator. Even without discerning his exact level, that fact alone was unmistakable. The middle-aged man's expression shifted abruptly. As he stared at the young man, recognition and fear flashed across his face. Without hesitation, he formed a hand seal and fled, transforming into a streak of white light. In just a few flashes, He was already hundreds of feet away. His sudden escape stunned everyone present. Even Han Li was slightly taken aback. Then his eyes narrowed. "You recognize me?" His voice turned colder. With a casual flick of his finger, a thin red line shot forth, slicing through the air with a piercing whistle. It vanished, and an anguished scream rang out in the distance. The fleeing streak of light collapsed, replaced by a burning figure that plummeted into the ocean and sank without a trace. Moments later, the red line returned, slipping back into Han Li's hand. He turned his gaze toward the remaining cultivators. Now he said calmly, "Are you willing to answer my question?" Though his tone remained, even a chill ran through every listener. Only now did they understand why their leader had fled without hesitation. This man was terrifying. With their leader slain in an instant, none of them dared act rashly. Fear weighed heavily upon them. After a long pause, a hook-nosed man stepped forward, forcing a strained smile. "What? What would you like to know, senior?" Han Li's eyes turned cold. "Didn't I already ask? Must I repeat myself?" The man's heart lurched. "My apologies, senior. I'll answer immediately," he stammered. "Yes, Heavenly Star City has already been surrounded by our coalition. Otherwise, we wouldn't dare approach so closely." "I see." A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face. So the Starfall Coalition advanced ahead of schedule to catch the Star Palace off guard and eliminate all its loyalists in one stroke. A clever scheme. I don't know the details," the man replied hastily. "We merely follow orders." Han Li's gaze sharpened slightly. "But even so, Heavenly Star City is vast. Even with tens of thousands of cultivators, it shouldn't be possible to completely encircle it. Correct?"